Thanks for joining us on today's webinar with me, Richard Michie. I'm the CEO of Optimist, and Gareth Turner, who is, up until I think it was Wednesday, the head of marketing for Weetabix. He's about to launch his own little marketing venture. Not little, actually. No, not little. That's not fair. What is it? The Black Door, Mark?
Big black door. Big black door. Yes, it's little at the moment. It's only me, right? But world domination is only a matter of time.
Perfect. So today we're basically going to talk to Gareth. Thanks for joining us, Chris. Chris has joined us. So Gareth, a little bit about Gareth, or how I met Gareth. I met Gareth via LinkedIn, because I'm like that. I kind of badger people on LinkedIn. Gareth kindly connected with me. We had a couple of chats on LinkedIn, and we finally met properly the other week in Leeds. So without further ado, I'm just going to let kind of Gareth. Do you want to introduce yourself? You can do it far better than I can.
Can I? So I'm Gareth, right? And I have had a very, very lucky career. I've been very fortunate with some of the places I've worked and the brands I've worked on. So 23 years. I reckon I'm probably undercalling that a little bit, but it's just too depressing to think any further than that. But 23 years FMCG sales and marketing. So I did first part of my career was in sales, and I worked at Diageo in sales, and then joined Scottish and Newcastle, which became Heineken, in a sales role, and became sales director for the East of England for Heineken, and then moved into marketing, where I kind of always had a bit of a hankering after getting into to get into marketing, and I ran the John Smith's brand. So I did the last set of Peter Kay adverts for John Smith's, which was Golden Arrow winning adverts, to give them their full title. Adverts with Peter Kay, that was good. Then ran the Bulmers brand, as I've just been chatting about, sort of in the virtual green room there. Ran the Bulmers brand, did some nice work with them, and repositioned that brand to allow them to move into, I say fruit ciders. Obviously apple is fruit, right? But other fruit ciders, like the flavoured ciders, because they were losing a load of share to people like Recordlig and Copperberg back in the day. And that's it's quite gratifying when you see your work broadly still being used. That's a long time later. Then moved to Arla Foods, did a number of roles at Arla Foods. The biggest couple of roles were I was the marketing director for their butter business in the UK. So Lurpak, Anchor, and Private Label were in my remit. And the last job I did there was as the head of brand on the Arla brand. So in Europe, and we brought a lot of disparate advertising together, consolidated a lot of agencies and work, and across I think about eight or so markets. That was an interesting time as well. And then left to join Weetabix, where I was head of marketing for 3 years. So did the last couple of adverts they've done there at Weetabix, and did the FA partnerships, which are on pack at the moment. So a good time to do those deals, as the all England teams, so men's and women's teams, all England teams are doing very well. And now I'm as of Thursday, as of yesterday, I'm full time on Big Black Door, which the ambition is to bring all that experience to smaller businesses, to scale up businesses who perhaps need some senior marketing nous and expertise, but perhaps without the millstone of senior marketing salary 24/7. So I can pop in for the times they need it, and they don't have to pay for me when they don't.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's really good. I guess one of the first things that I think we probably should look at really is I am going to call it the elephant in the room. It's not really an elephant in the room, but what it is Beenz on Bix. And I know I've seen you talk about Beenz on Bix a lot, but Beenz on Bix is the famous. If there's ever a famous tweet,
question I had.
There you go. So if there's ever a famous tweet, I think Beenz on Bix is probably one of them. Other than maybe the what was the one from the Super Bowl where they kind of did the thing where it blacked out? and they use the biscuits. But anyway,
Or
Beans
Oreo.
on Bix went ballistic. So I've heard the story, but for the benefit of the webinar, could you touch on what Beans on Bix is and how it came about?
So the first thing I should say is that it's, whilst I'm the one who's talking about it here, and you're absolutely right, Richard. I've wanged on about this a lot in the interest of trying to publicise myself to get as I move into trying to set up my own consultancy. Right, it's not rocket science here. I was on the awareness driving phase, right? But my team did the Weetabix and Beenz thing, right? So, but I feel qualified to talk about it. The Tuesday the 9th of February 2021, 1.3 billion views, and there's it appeared on The Last Leg, it appeared on GMTV, on Ant and Dec, it was on This Morning, it was debated in the House of Commons. It was a heck of a week. It was a heck of a week. And we got Jacob Rees-Mogg saying, what a man. Jacob Rees-Mogg saying, Weetabix, or he said, I think it's something like, as Nanny used to say, Weetabix are unbeatabix. So yeah. what an endorsement.
The haunted pencil.
What an endorsement. God, you just came in from nowhere there, scared me a bit. I thought it was Rees-Mogg coming to get me. So yes, it was a big week. And we normally get asked sort of 4 questions on that. We get asked, whose idea was it? How did you make it happen? Was it a scary situation? And what were the results? They're the 4 questions we get asked. And if I'm going to briefly, don't worry, I'll briefly sort of touch on all those. Whose idea was it? Well, it was just the latest point in a load of strategy. So Weetabix have different advertising strands. One of them is our equity building strands. We subscribe to the Field and Binet, long and the short of it, advertising sort of Marcom's strategy. We have an equity driving, which the one that launched a little while ago was the story of the Wolf and the Three Pigs, sort of a role reversal there. And then we have sort of consumption inspiration driving comms, which is just, we call Any Which Weetabix, which is just sort of quirky ways of eating the product. So that's a strand we've done recipe books where we get people to send in ideas, and one of those recipes in that book was I call it like a breaded coated chicken, but it was like a crushed up Weetabix coated chicken breast and baked in the oven, like a healthy KFC.
I've tried that
idea. You're welcome. And that got a bit of traction. That made it into the Sun, and we go, hang on, well, maybe there's something interesting here. Maybe there's some things which are a bit more out there could get some traction. And so the agency and Elaine, the assistant brand manager in the team, came up with these 5 partnerships. We had Marmite, Heinz Beanz, we had Innocent Smoothies, we had Pip and Nut peanut butter, and we had Cathedral City cheddar. And we did Marmite on the Monday, and we did Beenz on the Tuesday, and bang, that exploded. I thought Marmite was the one. Shows you what little I know, right? But I thought Marmite was the one, and that exploded. And then we layered in everything else. We brought the ones from later in the week earlier. We had a bank of pre-prepared responses. So when it started going big, we replied with iterations of a pre-prepared bank of responses. Eventually, it got so big that we had to prioritize ones who had the most reach and the most traction. So that's how sort of the day panned out. But we had approached each one of those brands. So we'd teed up with Heinz, for example, to say, well, we want to tweet this. Are you okay with that? And they said, yes, we are. I said, well, what are you going to say? They said, well, we'll say this. I mean, oh, great. If you say that, we'll say this. So it was all the first sort of 3 or 4 steps on that road were all planned, and then we had a bank of responses. So it is a bit boring. Right? It's not. There was no. Yeah, there was some genius in there as well, but I think we got a bit of lucky. So I think we were brave. I think we combined that bravery with some good strategy and some old-fashioned planning and preparation. Right? There's a I think it's a military saying that 7 P's. It's that proper planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance, and you can't substitute the proper planning and preparation, and that's what Elaine and our agency team at Frank did. So they planned, they engaged, and we lucked out a bit. We just hit the right spot at the right moment, and the rest is history.
It's one of those things that I think a lot of people see things like because all the public and all people on the outside see is that tweet and it going to billions of hitting billions of views, being seen everywhere. What they don't see is the quite dull bit around it going, we've got to speak to this person, I've got to get these kind of responses racked up, I've got to get legal clearance, I've got to plan it, I've got to think it through. And that's the bit that people kind of don't see, that before and after. And I think there's an amount of kind of one of the questions that we spoke about earlier was there's an amount of bravery as well, because some more conservative minded clients might have gone, oh, that's a bit risky. What if that's people don't eat beans and Weetabix? That's just not what they do, and that seems a bit risky, and I don't like that. I think it's that tiny bit of bravery, and I think that's something that a lot of people can learn from, especially in social. It needs to be something that's interesting. A lot of people are so conservative that they'll kind of go, no, that's a bit stretched too far. Whereas at the end of the day, what have you really got to lose? If that tweet went out and nothing happened, it was just a tweet, wasn't it?
Totally agree. You know, that we worked hard at Weetabix to create an environment where bravery, and let's just be clear, we're marketeers, so let's not overstate this. We're not firefighters, we're not frontline medical staff. We're just writing some stuff, right? It's not that brave.
Yeah.
But we've tried to create a culture of boldness, let's call it, rather than bravery. I think there are a few things you can do. What you can do is make. So if you think about firefighters and you think about the army, etc., the military, that's proper bravery. But what they do is they train hard. They create an environment, an area of safety that makes the brave feel a bit less brave to them. To the outsider, it looks like, oh my God, what are you doing? But they've trained within an inch of their lives, right? They know exactly what they're doing. So what we've tried to do is create an environment where the brave feels less brave, the bold feels less bold, where you've got a place of psychological safety and encouragement, and everyone's doing their bit, and we have very clear RACI, so we know who's responsible, who's accountable for stuff. And a couple of I'm not saying we do it all the time, right? But a couple of the sort of mantras that we have, which have seemed to get some traction, were, the first is yes if. So to play this example out, I don't think it went like this, but I'm illustrating a point here. If Elaine had brought that to me and said, Gareth, can we do this? I'd say yes if. So to a different example, can we make the boxes round, Gareth? Well, yeah, we could do that if you can get the guys who are operating the line to say that will go down the line well, and if we could sell more than our current shape of box, and if the reality is we can't. Okay, the reality is to use that example, you can't put round boxes because you can't get the Weetabix in there, right? But it just shuts someone down if you say no, because there's no coaching there, no one's learnt anything there, you just said no. But if you can say, well, yeah, we could do that if you can get it down the line, all right, then the person has now learned, oh yeah, okay, of course they need to be square to go down the line, and they've learned it's quite an empowering conversation. The other mantra we have is, as you said, Richard, what's the worst that could happen? And in this example, we did have that conversation. Well, what's the worst that could happen? The reality is yeah, you said, well, some people, a lot of people won't eat. No, hardly anyone will eat Weetabix and Beenz,
No, exactly.
right?
Told you.
So what? So what? What is someone going to stop eating Weetabix? Really? Someone going to stop eating wheat because we said, look at this funny thing over here with Weetabix and Beenz? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. No way. The worst that can happen is maybe some people will think it's disgusting, but they seriously think we're suggesting that as a serving suggestion. Really? Yeah. I know the UK population has made some alarming decisions over the years, but really, nothing would be as alarming as thinking that that's a serious serving suggestion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what's the worst that can happen? It doesn't seem that bad to me. There's no legal implications because we'd spoken to Heinz, and actually, if Heinz had said no, you can still talk about beans on Bix because there's no IP in that image. It was just a plate of beans, and it could have been any beans. As long as you don't use a Z, you'd be okay. So there's nothing bad that can happen. So the reality is, what's the worst that can happen? Well, it's not that bad. So let's crack on.
Yeah, it's one of those things when I talk to clients about kind of content, what you really want is people to be kind of one extreme, especially on social. They either want to love it or hate it.
Yes.
First thing you can do on social or any kind of marketing really is for someone to go, and if they go, then it's not worked. You have to have a reaction. Obviously,
a point of view
is better.
Sorry, Richard. Sorry, but a point of view for a brand isn't a useful point of view unless you can take an equally valid and opposite point of view. So you think about, okay, it's probably not politically correct. I'm probably showing my age here, right? Miss World, and they say, what are your hopes? World peace. Well, no one can disagree with that. You say no. I don't want world peace.
Yeah.
But to say we think you should serve beans on Bix, well, that's valid. Someone else could, and you can equally valid as I do not think you should serve beans on Bix. That's okay, and that is an insignificant but lively debate.
But I do think there's definitely something about that bravery, because there's some clients just wouldn't go there, and there is that point of the point of social. One of the key things that I always tell people is it should be thumb stopping. It should kind of go and go, what is that? And then you've got a reaction one way or the other, and for social, that's what drives it. And if your social is Blair, then nobody cares, and you've almost wasted. You might as well have not done whatever campaign you worked on if nobody cares.
I think the other thing which was quite unusual about that campaign was that it was entirely organic. So there was that week of activity with photo shoots and agency fees probably cost us $5,000 in total, and we think we got about £2 million of media value from that
wow.
Tuesday alone.
That's a hell of a return on investment, isn't it?
But having said that, one of the other questions is, what were the results? So we got great numbers, but the truth is you can't say anything, any extra sales, you can't attribute anything to that one tweet, just like you can't to one airing of an ad. It's that the strategy that surrounded that recipe and equity, long and the short of it. We did some media changes at the time as well. So we moved away from TV, pretty much TV only, to TV and broadcaster, VOD and social media. We layered in some other media. You put all that together, then we did grow market share. We did our awareness grew by 40%, our spontaneous awareness by 40%. Sort of year on year. So you put all that together, it delivered, but you can't say that one tweet did anything. No,
and I think again that's another thing that people don't see, is they see that one tweet and they see that as the kind of explosion. What they don't see is, like you said, that was part of a much longer strategy, and that was just one tiny little component that had it not gone ballistic would have just been another little stepping stone, another little kind of brick in the wall of Weetabix. I guess for you guys, it's interesting because I think you said prior that pretty much Weetabix in the UK at least must have everyone's heard of Weetabix, must have 100% penetration on brand recognition. I can't think of anybody who would go, I don't know what Weetabix is, other than like a toddler who's can't even speak.
Well,
Everyone knows Weetabix.
Well, yeah, it's my normal joke there. Thank you, Richard. You teed me up. The prompted awareness for Weetabix is 97%, and I think 3% are lying.
Yeah,
it's a very strong prompted awareness.
Yeah, and I think that must have added to the fact that it went that tweet went so viral, because you're a big brand. If you are, I don't know, if you're a corner shop and you've not got that much brand, and so a corner shop could have come up with this tweet, because it's just Beenz and Weetabix. Yeah, I can do that. The power of Weetabix added to the leverage of doing that. You're already a world famous, a UK famous brand, at least, if not world. You must be world famous, but I guess I don't know how it translates. So that kind of leverages it, doesn't it? That's kind of gives you that turn.
Yeah, and you've got Heinz, who are pretty active as well, and you've got two relatively large brands having a bit of bants, and that's I think that's people quite. There's an appeal to that. People like to see that.
Yeah, definitely. Lovely. Well, I'll move on from Beenz on Bix. So if anyone wants to come back to it later, we can do. That's all fine. So we talked about Bravery earlier there, but also one of the things that I've heard you speak about before is the amount of kind of experimentation you'll put into something. So you'll have your budget and your plan, but you allow an amount of experimentation. Just tell us a little bit about that.
So yeah, it's happened. We do it at Weetabix, and we did it at Arla Foods as well. So we'd have like a 70-20-10 approach. So 70% of certainly our media budget, but you'd hope sort of beyond just a media budget, but 70% of your budget on tried and tested, absolute dead cert bankers. So for us at the time, that was TV. So TV for Weetabix delivers a world-class ROI. And bearing in mind, I've worked in some businesses that got some great advertising. Weetabix delivers a world-class ROI on advertising. So you'd be crazy not to have that as your bedrock of activity, because it delivers so well. You've got 20% of your spend on things that maybe you think are working, but you're not sure, or you've seen work elsewhere, but you've not proved it at your business yet. So 20% on a little bit brave, and then 10% on bravery. And the reality is that the percentages differ. It's a guideline, right? So 10% on something that you think I've got no idea if it's going to work or not. No idea. And the reality is that, generally speaking, you spend that money on things that you think are probably going to work.
Yeah.
Because it feels very uncomfortable to do stuff that isn't going to work.
Yeah.
If you think it's going to work, other people are doing it already. If you could find something that you got to think, well, this ain't going to work, or I don't think this will work, but bloody hell, if it did work, it'd be amazing. It would really step change. Then that's the killer. That's the real test, is to find something that no one else is doing, and then the critical part then is if you find something that works, you double down on it hard. You move it quickly into 20 and maybe into 70 if it's working. So you can scale it. So you test, learn, and scale.
Right. Cool. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Because it is that thing of people kind of will stick to a budget and go, no, this is what we do. This is what we do. Carry on doing it, and then go, and then not really put an effort around looking for new things, because people are scared, especially when it's a recession and things like that. People are going, no, I need to look after my budget. They can get a bit, no, we're not going to try that because I've got a dead cert here. But from my days in direct marketing, you would always test against your banker. I mean, I know that's putting it a bit more basically, but you've kind of got your banker pack, and we always had a banker pack, and we would test 2 packs against it to see if we could beat the banker. Yeah, and that's effectively what you're doing, but on a larger segment scale.
But to play that out, how we monitored that through econometric modeling. That's because that's ultimately the ROI is ultimately what I'm judged on. But you'd so if TV is your bedrock, then you have so the key is to have these hypotheses that you're testing. The hypothesis would be, well, TV plus broadcast of VOD will deliver better than TV alone. Let's test that. Bang, so you test that. Okay, it has. Okay, what about TV, VOD, and radio? Let's test that together. Okay, does that deliver better? And that you just take it slowly, small increments, so you can work out what's working, what's not working, and you then bank it, and you move on to the next thing, and you're just constantly trying to nudge a little bit. But when you've got spend in the level of a Heineken or a Beenz or a Weetabix, then a small increment upside is a large number.
Yeah.
1%. If you move from an ROI of 1.2, £1.20 to the pound invested to 1.3 on a £10 million spend, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Okay, so tell us a little bit about your career, because I think not everyone gets to the giddy heights of working on the brands that you worked on. Not everyone gets the giddy heights of Weetabix. It's quite a large brand to work on, and Arla and Beenz and all the others. So how did you get there? Tell me about the young Gareth. How did you get to that point?
Well, the assumption there is that I'm no longer young, which is a bit rude, Richard. A bit rude. None taken. I don't know. I've just sort of stumbled along the way. And do you know what? You talk about the dizzy heights of those brands. It doesn't feel like I'm at the dizzy heights when you're working on those brands.
No.
So I had like a fanboy moment when a while ago I was in touch with Joe Glover from the Marketing Meetup, and I had a video call with him, and we got connected. It was on Teams, much better than Zoom. Got connected, and he went, "I can't believe I'm speaking to Gareth." I said, "I can't believe I'm speaking to Joe." Okay, but we're just like normal blokes, right? We just And so how did I get there? I sort of stumbled a little bit from job to job. So I've talked a bit about my career at the start, but my early roles were in sales, but I got involved. When I was at university, I wanted to be in advertising. So maybe that's where we can trace it back to. I wanted to be an account manager, and I had a couple of interviews with very sort of swanky agencies in central London. Didn't get past the first interview. I remember being walked back to the lifts in one of them, and they said to me, "You've done well to get this far." I thought, I'm not coming back, am I? That's not what you say as you're about to get a second interview, is it? No. So I've always had an interest in marketing stuff. So I got involved in as many projects as I could. When I was in sales, I got any NPD projects where they wanted a salesperson. I said, "Yeah, I'll get involved in that," and I got given a chance. It's as simple as that. I've been with Heineken for probably 10 years or something. Done all right. I was performing well as a sales director, and I applied to be the marketing manager on Foster's, and I had the interviews, and just steady on, lad, steady on. You're not doing that one, but we'll give you John Smith's. Not even you could mess up John Smith's. So they gave me a chance on John Smith's, well-established positioning. It was a brand that we were managing the decline on almost. But then we then went back and did some advertising and grew market share on that. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then just opportunities arose over the time to say, okay, well, I've done that. I've learned a lot on John Smith. I've learned the fundamentals of marketing without being able to wreck it.
Yeah. Okay,
well, now let's look at a project or a brand that gives you some experience on generating a strategy. And that's when the Beenz work came along. And then there was some geographical challenges, shall we say. I was living in Leeds, and at Heineken, the offices are in London and Edinburgh. And that was challenging. So I moved to Arla, which was just down the road, and just sort of went from role to role and looked at what the experience was that I was going to gain. So got given a couple of breaks there, and that brought me here. So I don't think I've been that considered. That's a bit of a regret of mine in my career. I wish I'd been more. I generally don't sort of look back and regret stuff, right? But I wish I'd been a bit more driven and focused, and I wish I got into marketing 10 years earlier.
Yeah.
Because I didn't. Sales and marketing doesn't feel like it, but it's a big career change.
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to get in at a reasonable level in marketing. I came in to run a team in the marketing team, having had no experience in marketing at all. So I don't think there's many people who'd get that opportunity.
No, absolutely not. No. So this might sound like a really cheesy question, but based on that, what bit of advice would you give to somebody who wanted to come into marketing now?
Well, again, this is a case of do as I say, not as I do, right? Because it's only recently that I've learned this, but I would advise someone just to find a way to build your resilience. And for me, until probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, I would take it all very personally, get very defensive about stuff. And it was holding me back, right? It made me look like a bit of a dick in meetings when I was defending something so hard and justifying it. Well, yeah, come on, mate. You just sort of separate yourself from the work. Mm-hmm. So I listened to a load of podcasts. I just did some thinking about it and spoke to some people. I spoke to people who I thought might have that themselves. So I spoke to Felipe, who is the ECD at BBH, and he did a talk for us about it's not you, it's the work, and separating yourself from work, because a creative has to bring a piece of work to the creative director or the client and probably get rejected more often than not. Yeah. They've got to pick themselves up and come back again. Yeah. That takes some resilience, right? To be able to go, okay, yeah, it wasn't right. I'm going to go again. I'm going to go again. So how do they do that? So he talked about that. And I suppose the how I've got over this is there was one. So I listened to podcasts about from the kicking coach for Johnny Wilkinson. You know, how does he, when he misses one, how does he come back and kick it over? All these different sports related people. And the one that stuck with me was he's a made up example, but he talked about tennis players and this idea that even Rafa would have these doubts, would have these moments where you get this piece of negative feedback and you go, I'm rubbish, I need to give up. I'm rubbish at marketing. I need to stop this now and do something else. I'm going to resign. That's it. I'm going to resign. That's the solution. I'm going to resign. We all get those moments. But he talks in this slightly made up example. He said, imagine Rafa in the final at Wimbledon and that he's receiving serve. The serve comes and he puts the first return into the net. It's only natural to think, oh, I'm rubbish at this. I need to give up tennis. It's time to retire. My back's hurting too much now. But quickly, you got to get yourself out of that and remind yourself of the reality. Well, the reality is he's in the final at Wimbledon. And the reality is he's doing all right for himself. He's the world number one or whatever he is, right? And so for me, it was a reminder of, you're doing all right here, Gareth. You're presenting this thing to the board, and yeah, you're getting a bit of a hard time right now. Number one, it's the work, it's not you. Mm-hmm. And number two, you're in a household, you're running a household name brand and you're presenting to the board. You're doing okay. Okay. So just get this in perspective a little bit. Take a breath. Think of what is it they're really asking you. Listen to what they're saying. What are they really asking? Take a breath. Get back into your routine. So Rafa then gets into his routine with arranging his water bottles and fiddling with his pants and things. What's my version of that? My version of that is, well, I'm the voice of the consumer in this business. Well, what would a consumer say about this? That should be my kind of go-to thing. What the consumers say about this, and what's the what's going to drive the best commercial reality, what's the best commercial result.
Yeah.
So you just got to give yourself a couple of go-to questions, and then you're back calibrated again. So a long-winded answer, I find a way to get resilience. I found my way. Everyone's way will be different, but if you can be resilient, then that will, I think, just make life a bit easier for you, because it's, you know, when you're worrying about stuff and you're taking it all personally, it's not a nice feeling.
Yeah. And I think that's a great piece of advice. In my early days, I was a graphic designer, and I changed to marketing because I was an average graphic designer, and I wasn't as good as I ever wanted to be. But the hardest thing with graphic design, anything like that, or writing, or any piece of that, is you kind of go, look what I've done. What do you think to it? And they go, oh, can you change blue to green, or that word to that word? And you're like, I've spent hours getting this exactly right, and it looks perfect. And you do take that personally, but you do get to a point where you kind of have to go, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to do direct response adverts in the back of the broadsheet when I worked in travel. And again, I'm sure my director at the time, he would take in this piece of copy and he would get his red pen out and he'd go, I want to name him Hugh, would get his red pen out and he'd go, no. And you're like, oh, God. But you told me to write that last time, Hugh, and now you've crossed it out and changed it. And I'm swear he would do it for the heck of it, or it felt like it at the time. But actually, you would build up that resilience of going, he's not making the changes for the sake of it. He wants to improve me and the ad at the time. Yeah. And it's hard to take. So that resilience is a really, really good point.
Felipe was in when he came in to talk to our department about resilience and bravery. He talked about when he was sort of a junior creative, he talked about the ECD at the time. Then he'd bring the work in. So Felipe would come in with the work. They'd all come in, and they'd have to put the work down on the floor, bits of paper down on the floor, where in the ECD's office, and the ECD would walk around smoking his massive cigar, and if he didn't like it, he would just tap a bit of ash onto your piece of work just to signify that wasn't going to be going through.
That's harsh. I think I've heard the same about David Ogilvy, who would walk around the copy room, and they had typewriters at the time, and he would rip out of the typewriter, he would rip out what people were writing and read it out loud to the entire room. And if it wasn't right, he would go, well, that's it. And that's a bit harsh and very old.
Sure, it's a culture that I'd be resilience, but that's bullying, right?
I don't think that would go down particularly well in an office at the moment. But the beauty, the whole point of that is that what he knew was that when that advert hit the streets, hit the press, whatever, that the public would read it in that exact way. And if it can't be read out loud, then it's not going to work. So that's really, the resilience point is really, really interesting. I'm going to jump on to a couple of questions that might feel a bit left field. Who's your hero? And it doesn't have to be marketing, just in general. Who's your hero? Let's find out a little bit about you.
Well, so I knew, spoiler, right? Believe it or not, I did have a bit of a heads up on some of these questions.
You did on that one, yeah.
I know it doesn't look like that.
Give us a good answer then, if you had time to think.
Well, the truth is, I don't think I have a hero, but there are people who inspire me in all sorts of different ways. So if you're talking about marketing, right? I love reading Mark Ritson stuff. I like the whole Ehrenberg Bass. So Byron Sharp, Jenny, I always get her name wrong. Is it Jenny Romaniuk, who talks a lot about category entry points and distinctive brand assets. She's brilliant. She's well worth listening to. Perhaps not got the same publicity as Lord Byron of Sharp, but they would be excellent. Field and Burnett, I think I talked about earlier on. There's always great thinkers. I've been lucky enough to work with some big thinkers too, but that they're inspiring people. I think my family. I was chatting to someone this morning, and he was asking me about what my plans were and what my hopes were for the future for this business. And he said, well, when we used to meet up, Gareth, when in your old jobs, and we talked about what you did at the weekend, he said, it's all about your family. And I think my family does mean a lot to me. My family does mean, not I think, my family does mean a lot to me. and so I'm taking 6 weeks off, right, this summer to go and have some adventures with my family. That is an appeal. So I've got an 8-year-old son, and he's good fun to be around. So that's great. And then perhaps the last sort of area would be the only time I've really been starstruck was when I stood next to Ian Wright. So you can see in the background here, the Crystal Palace shirt there. Now, again, also showing my age here, but in the late 80s, early 90s, Palace had a good team.
They did.
And Ian Wright was part of that team, and he was brilliant. I loved watching him. And I was at a ticket booth picking up some tickets for a match, and he stood there, and I wanted to say hello to him. I wanted to say something to him, but I just couldn't. And I was also lucky enough to be invited to something before an ITV showcase when they were talking about the World Cup advertising opportunities, and basically someone trying to sell some stuff to us, and they had Roy Keane and Ian Wright was there, and I couldn't speak to him again there because I just he was too much of a hero of mine. I would love to have had my picture taken with him, but no, he was too much of a sort of superstar for me. So yeah, I don't think I've got one specific hero, but there's always people that I have enjoyed spending time with, or enjoyed reading about, or enjoyed watching.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to sneak out some insight into you. So I think this is actually one from Chris. Chris gave us this question. What's the best record ever made, single or an album? You can choose.
Well, it's a single.
Okay.
And there is a track by the Jackson Sisters called "I Believe in Miracles."
I know that one. Yeah, I've had that on a 12-inch. It's a great tune.
I've got it on a 12-inch as well somewhere, in a frame, and that was a soundtrack to my sort of late teen years with my friends, and as we discovered sort of rare groove and soul music in the clubs of South London. We used to go to a few places around sort of Streatham and Brixton, and occasionally ventured into the West End, but and we still enjoy that sort of music. And that became, so I live in Leeds now, and all my friends, the majority of my friends, live in South London still, and we spent more time together actually in lockdown through Zoom calls than we did previously. So actually, in that respect, I suddenly got closer to my friends than I had been previously, because it was okay to be on video calls. So we created soundtracks to different occasions, memories, and that track is always in our top tracks. And I think when we all put our favorite tracks in, we created a playlist, and every single one of us had put that track in.
Wow,
so
it's a banger. I have to give you that.
Absolutely. There's different covers of it, but that is the original is still the best.
Yeah. That's
only 3 minutes. It's 3 minutes well worth listening to. 3 minutes worth spending of your life. It's very short.
It is indeed. I'll definitely second that. Definitely, absolutely. Cool. Does anybody on the call have any questions for Gareth?
Well, I should think about it. I'm going to put a link to it in the chat.
We'll link to it. Definitely link to it on the post on LinkedIn. It's an amazing tune.
I've got a question actually, Richard, if I may.
Sure.
Not specifically relating to the Beenz on Bix, because it could relate to other campaigns you've worked on in your career, but aside from the brand partners that you were expecting responses from, like Heinz and Cathedral, did you get any responses that were a surprise, or that you didn't like as much as you thought you should?
I don't know about the last part, but there was some belting, and the best ones were the ones who were great and fast. So truth is, I don't think we would have responded quick enough if we had been a responder rather than an instigator. I don't think we'd have had the bravery to do it, if I'm being honest. For me, there was loads of ones like I think Aldi put something like unexpected item in the bagging area or something, which is quite interesting.
Aldi are great at that.
Good.
The US Embassy replied Do you remember there was that thing about I forget the person's name, Jackie Weaver. Read it and weep, Jackie Weaver.
Yeah.
These are
yes.
They
yeah.
did. They said these are not in the standing order or whatever. I forget what the term was for Jackie
no
Weaver.
authority. Or...
It said like you have no authority here, Weetabix. Read it and weep, or something they said. So, but my favourite was unbelievably, the State of Israel replied and said, "Finally, something the whole Middle East can agree on." What the heck is going on when that's happening? That's absolutely madness.
That must be quite a frightening point. Though. You kind of go, we've done this, and what the hell?
Yeah, I think we stayed away from replying to that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was some absolutely belting. And we got, but then sort of answering the second party question. We then got loads of people going, "Oh yeah, can we get involved here? We want to do this, that, and the other." And that, okay, it's all a bit desperate now, isn't it? You got to know when to stop. It's a bit like, dad jokes. And so everyone wants to get involved, and ask us to do other things. And we have got involved in some other things later, but it's like the next day or the next week. It just feels all a bit desperate. Oh, I got another one for you. So yeah, that's we did a town hall like the sort of the following week when we sort of reflected to the business, right? What the heck happened there, right? And we just sort of broadly what I've just shared with you, right? But with a few more videos. And the first question on the chat was, "What's next?" All right, can everyone just calm down a bit? That was quite good. Can we just enjoy that? And the truth is, there won't be a what's next for me. That's a once in a career moment.
Yeah.
So I ain't getting another one of those. That's for sure. So just keep it in context. It's like when Alan Sugar says he wants something to go viral. Well, you can create something that might go viral, and with a bit of luck and probably with a bit of spend, you possibly can make it go viral, but you can't guarantee it. So.
Cool. Yeah, that must be a bit alarming. How did you, once it blew up, what did you do with that? Did you scale up the kind of support that you had on social, or did you kind of go, let it run?
Well, we outsource it, so it's all run by Frank, who's our social media agency. So. Them and with some help from Elaine, the ABM. Elaine was actually on annual leave that week, so I'm not sure she had a particularly restful break. But
no, I'm not bet now.
But yeah, they scaled up, and that's part of the reason you spend a bit more money with an agency to do it, because they can scale up. And truth is, it's great news for them. So
absolutely, yeah.
That's their most awarded campaign ever, or most awarded thing ever. It was Marketing Week Campaign of the Year when. On Piers Morgan on GMTV, again in the video that I normally share, he says, "Whoever did this for you, Weetabix, give them whatever you're paying them, Weetabix, double it." He said, "I know who it is. It's Frank." So they've done all right. They've done all right as well. I
think that's one of the things it's rumbled on, hasn't it? So yeah, it was one tweet, but we're still talking about it 2 years later, nearly enough. And it
suits me, right?
It rumbled on for a few years. So the return on investment on that one tweet, I mean, it is kind of immeasurable. And it's weird. It's not just that it's a tweet; it's the fact that it hit a. It's less about the medium, I think, and it's more about the messages. It's what it was that hit it.
It's how wide it went.
Go on.
It's how wide it went. It's the fact that, and I think that was why. The most golden part for me of this discussion was about the strategy part of it, because so many people think of social as transient, because in terms of on a feed it is, but it just shows that actually the right campaign idea can actually then, that will be then spoke about in newspapers, magazines, television personalities, social, YouTube videos going everywhere about the thing.
Yeah.
The point is, it's the fact that it wasn't just a tweet. It's the fact that it started there and just spread out like.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It was one execution in a larger campaign idea. You're absolutely right. And the so let's say it hadn't been on brand. Let's say it'd been about something totally random. Well, it might have got that traction. It might have got that interest, but it'd been pulling in the wrong direction. It would have been unhelpful. Mm-hmm. So when you're doing stuff, it's got to be considered. It's got to be trying to pull all in the same direction. Otherwise you're wasting your effort. If you're not, if we want to talk about, one of the strands we want to talk about is recipe inspiration, serving suggestions, then that's one of the things you talk about, and you try and stay true to that.
Excellent. Cool. Does anyone else have any more questions for Gareth? Anything they want to ask? Hattie, are you still with us, Hattie?
I'm still here, yeah.
Lovely, lovely. Do you have anything you'd like to ask Hattie?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay.
Pressure.
I'm not going to force people. I'm not going to press gang you to ask any questions. That's not a problem.
Ask a question.
Ask a question.
No one's leaving until you ask a question.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure everyone's got an opportunity if they want to ask a question. That's great. Lovely. Right. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll just say thank you very much, Gareth. That's been really good. I know I've picked up some really good thoughts on that, and I really appreciate you giving us the time. So thank you very much, Gareth. I really
Thanks for asking me.
Appreciate it. And it's been a fun hour. I've really enjoyed this. It's been really good.
Yeah.
Good.